Hello, everybody, and welcome to Elseworlds Exchange. I am Sal, and I'm joined today by Heather Antos. Heather, thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, and by again, I mean, this is the first time you've ever been on this show, but
That's true.
we did a pickup show for Benny over on Absolute Comics, which is another show that you'll find actually both of us on, but me more frequently. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about you and what you do, and we're going to talk all kinds of stuff. We're talking about the comic book industry, and one of the things that I normally do on this show and all over the place is speculate about the comic book industry. You know, I've been reading them forever, and usually my co-hosts are like veterans of reading comics, which is to say veterans of nothing. And you know, we all have our own opinions and we all have our own conjecture, but like I really love we can get somebody who actually like works there or knows something. So that hopefully we can get some insights into like how things work, how things go, what folks can do if they ever wanted to get into it, and more importantly, what we can expect or what we can like prognosticate about the current state of the comic book industry, because that's basically, I think so. Yeah. Well, because basically,
good word.
Thank you very much. Well, I used to teach English, so but not very long, so I run out of words after a while. But yeah, so we could start with you, and we'll transition into an actual conversation, as opposed to the usual interview kind of thing where it's like, so you interviewed so and so for your high school newspaper. What was that like? You know, no. We're gonna talk about you and what you do. So what do you do if people aren't familiar?
Well, I am recently announced now senior editor at Valiant.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's weird getting promoted in the midst of a global pandemic.
Yeah. It almost feels ceremonial in yeah, you know what? You're Grand Poobah of Valiant. Congratulations, because we're gonna burn down tomorrow. Like it's just everything's scary. No, I don't mean Valiant. I mean like everything.
Well, literally everything, right? Yeah, like the whole world is at a standstill. But
Precisely.
you know, it's still an honor, you know, but on top of like a transition, there's like a universe-wide transition happening. So it's a lot to process, but it's exciting. Okay.
All right. That's great.
To say the least.
Yeah. That's very generous, I think, to be excited in a time like this. What were you doing and what do you do now? And what's the difference?
Yeah, so before I was just a normal editor,
right?
And we've talked a little bit about it on Absolute before, but just for the new listeners here, I normally equate a comic book editor to like a television or film producer. It's our job to pitch ideas, to source ideas, to cast talent, to oversee production, to make sure it happens on time, within budget, on schedule, and to get it out the door to you guys,
right?
In the best shape possible. And as comic editors, we're typically doing it for 6 to 15 projects at a time.
Oh
it's not like you're a producer on just one television show or two television shows. You are overseeing, a corner of a publishing line.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that in a nutshell was my job as an editor. And now as a senior editor, being higher up in the publishing department, one of the newer, and I would say probably the biggest addition to my responsibilities is now overseeing the publishing line as a whole.
Okay.
So it's not just, I have an idea for Shadow Man and I want to do the Shadow Man book. It's how does the Shadow Man book fit in with the Exo-Man of War, fit in with the Ninjak, fit in with the Harbinger, fit in with everything going on in the universe.
Yeah.
And do we want to plan events? Where does the one-shots go? It's planning out the publishing schedule as a whole and how it makes sense not only for Valiant, but within the year for retailers and for the industry.
Yeah. So rather than hearing about what the event's going to be and how your book's going to work, you're more dictating, like, hey, this is going to be what we're doing, and so.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say dictating.
No, well, it has a very negative connotation, but
I would say crafting.
Crafting, yes, it's a collaborative. It's all plastic, man. Here we go. Yeah. But yeah, that's cool. So this actually only just happened. What, like less than a month ago? About a month ago?
Yeah, I mean, it happened internally before it got announced. So I would say, gosh, I don't even know. March was so long.
March was like another year. We might as well be in 2021 right now.
I know. It happened, I think, beginning of February, end of January. I don't really know.
Did you see that joke? It's been circulating around where it's just somebody tweeted, I don't remember who it was, but they're brilliant, where they just said, why the fuck did I buy a 2020 calendar? Like, why did I buy a 2020 planner?
Yeah.
And I was like, what an amazing comment. Like, but because that's where we are. Like,
I started literally 2 weeks before all the like shutdowns and lockdowns took place. I started doing mason jar meal planning that way. Like, I literally just grab a mason jar of breakfast and lunch before I go to work, and that's it. It's done, and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. It was going so well, and then you're never leaving your house ever again.
Right. Hope you went shopping earlier and got everything else.
Right. Yeah. So, it's something to look forward to when life returns, I guess.
Yeah. Planning again. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So you've had the gig for a bit. Before everything kind of went topsy-turvy, what were you already in the planning phases of the initiative, like the like 2021, 2022?
Yeah. No. We had, obviously our 2020 schedule has been locked, and we were currently in the midst of locking the first half of 2021 and like doing some really, really cool things, which are still going to happen. It's now just a matter of when they're going to happen, and are they going to happen in the same order, and what our needs are coming out of the global pandemic when shops are, up and running again, as to not overwhelm retailers and overwhelm the industry,
right.
And things like that. So yeah, it's been, I would say, thrust into the deep end really quickly.
Totally.
But I like that. Like, I like learning on the fly. I appreciate a good challenge. And, I'm a student of improv. So there's a lot of that going on right now.
Oh, sure.
From everyone, literally globally, and every single industry, not just comics. Everything is changing day by day. So, yeah.
Yeah, you've been part of this, like, effort to kind of like bring Valiant into its next phase and being like, here's Valiant, here's what we're doing. And now you're playing, I have to assume that you and many of the other talented people at Valiant are trying to, I don't know, not only do damage control, but also come up with a plan for, we're talking about the industry kind of being affected and damaged, or at the very least shocked. Let's say shocked by what's going on. And so I imagine that there have been some all hands on deck meetings pretty much daily for you guys to go, okay, so that this was the plan for 2021, but let's come up with a new plan that also allows us to have like the most amount of sales and the most amount of like, creative, bombasticness going on. I don't know what to call it, but like, how different is the plan today versus like, let's say a month ago?
Oh, it's 100% different. Like, I mean, books aren't shipping in April, period.
Right.
Like, so anything planned for April ain't happening, or well, it's not happening in April. Like it's a thing where everything that's been announced, everything that's been solicited, everything that we have in the works is still happening. Like, that hasn't changed in any way, shape, or form. It's just when things are up and running again, what is the first thing we put out? What do we return with? It's like, those are the questions that we're asking. And literally, just like you said, like, we are meeting every single day, first thing in the morning, all the department heads. And the first question that comes out of our publisher's mouth is, okay, what is the industry talking about now? What have we heard? How are people pivoting? What news is going on, and what do we think? How do we think we should react?
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, in you guys' case, you had to stop production entirely, which means there are no artists and writers currently producing books. Is that still the case, or is that?
So that's actually incorrect.
Okay, I'm glad to dispel that, because that's what I heard.
Yeah, no, that's actually incorrect. Certain projects were told to put in pause just because, it was a thing of literally this book isn't even on the publishing schedule yet.
Right.
So, everyone is trying to best manage budgets as best they can. Like every industry is doing this. We're seeing it across the board. And, again, it's like I said, it's not that these projects aren't happening. It's just we have to reevaluate when they're happening. And so projects that are happening sooner have to take precedence.
Totally. Now, because I was thinking, I was privy to a little bit of behind the curtain stuff at Valiant. I'm not going to reveal any of it, but I do want to mention that, like, you had, there was a rollout. We got this, we have this, and then after that we have this. Now that you are a month kind of like in holding pattern, has there been any temptation to go like, based on the release of this, we can kind of rearrange some of this stuff, since we didn't really make any announcements about it?
Yeah, I mean, there's, we have publishing plan meetings all the time.
Sure.
And it's weird. Like everything has shifted and everything has changed, but at the same time, things also haven't, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Well, because you have to be consistent, and you're made these decisions based on, I assume, projections and market research, and so you're just like, well, this is going to sell at this point. Like if you're planning a summer event, and I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying like if one were to be planning a summer event, one would probably not want to move it to the fall or the winter. So obviously there are some things that make sense to put out at a certain time.
No, for sure. And that's a lot of it. It's, when like hypothetically, because there's still no news yet from Diamond.
Yeah.
But like hypothetically, were Diamond to start shipping books again in say, July, hypothetically.
Sure.
Is that a month where we want to come back with a number 1? Is that a month where we want to come back with a number 3 and just continue? Is that a month where we want, if we do a number 1, do we do a number 1 of one of the staple characters? Do we do it with one of the up and coming characters? Do we do that with new IP? What do we do based on how the industry is reacting, how Valiant is? Like, these are the thoughts and questions that are, that I never, as an editor, that wasn't my job description.
No, you got the marching orders. Yeah,
exactly. And so now I'm involved with those conversations, and those are editorial. What are our needs and what are our thoughts versus sales versus marketing versus et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So
I think it's interesting. A comment you made earlier where you were like, we're just checking to see what the industry's doing, and kind of like every morning we're like, what happened? Because that's pretty much across the board, from artists and writers to editors to YouTubers who talk about comics. Like everybody's like, okay, what happened this morning? And like, and it was for this a whole week that we've been shooting this episode. Like it has been every morning there's a new development. It went from like, DC and Marvel were gonna go digital only to, oh, never mind, actually we're not, to Diamond actually might be like totally screwed, to, hey, Comic Hub is offering this new initiative, and no one can catch up because the industry has been run a certain way for at least 30 years, and it's like, so, and it's funny because I was talking to another creative about this the other day, and he mentioned that we're in a situation where it's like, maybe we shouldn't be reacting so much.
I agree.
Like maybe it's more like, react in terms of response publicly, but in terms of what we're doing internally, we should just kind of not stay the course, because I know there's a lot of negative connotations to it, but the concept of like, when we get out of this, will the comic book industry itself, the production part of it, be affected as much as like retailers and fans and artists and writers and stuff? Because that's where we are, and and it's fascinating, like, to think about like what we should be doing and what you guys are reacting to and doing for what's best for you,
Yeah, I think like, and this is getting much broader than comics, but I think,
that's fine.
Global state of the world, we're truly facing a situation that we have never faced in our lifetimes. Like
Right.
we haven't, and no one has, no industry has. And so I think there is a lot of anxiety and a lot of panic being expressed and reacted to in a way that people don't necessarily process as anxiety and panic.
Sure.
It's human nature to respond to anxiety by trying to showcase control of some kind,
right.
and that, everything's handled and we've got this. But I think sometimes that, tends to make announcements and make decisions from companies that they haven't fully thought through.
Right.
Or that, we're sending this statement to respond, to reassure our investors, but then where does that leave the customers or the retailers?
Right.
Or we're sending this statement to reassure retailers, but how does that affect the investors or customers or things like that? Like, and so I think the fact that there's so much that's indeterminate, like Diamond saying we're not shipping anything new, but without a date of reassessment, or, same thing with government lockdowns, saying the government is shelter at home indefinitely. That adds a lot of anxiety.
Totally.
To an already anxious group of people.
Who are just looking for answers and can't get them themselves. Like we're looking to the arbiters.
It's hard to have a contingency plan with you're given literally nothing, right? And so like at Valiant, we're not panicking. We're just trying to, this is the information we have today. And so this is how we need to pivot and adjust internally. And, we are talking with retailers every single day. We're talking with every single publisher, with other publishers every single day. We're talking with creators and keeping them informed.
Yeah.
And just really trying to reassure everyone that, we're in this, but we're in this together. And this industry isn't going away. It's probably going to shift and change a little bit, but so is everything else,
Yeah, that's true.
And there's something almost reassuring in that, is that literally no matter what, everything is shifting. And so we have to be in this all together.
Right. It's funny because I was thinking about, apropos that line of thought, how about statements and, putting out the word and assuring your investors, or in terms of like the comic book industry, kind of like your readers. I noticed that Valiant was very quick to put out a statement. Like, here's what we're doing, here's our plan. Or at the very least, here's our reaction, and here's what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future, which is probably going to be like a week or two, because God only knows what's happening a week from now. But I noticed that, like, other larger publishers who will remain nameless for the time being have opted for a kind of non-answer, wait-and-see kind of approach, which I found very curious. And, where it's like, there's this thing, we don't know what they're going to do. We now know what, like, IDW, Boom, Dark Horse, and Valiant are going to do, but we don't know what you're going to do. And I noticed that they're selectively silent, and I find it interesting because it's kind of like this, well, if we don't say anything, then no one can scrutinize it, and we'll just do whatever we want. And it turns out we don't actually really have to say anything. Like, I think that's a lesson that I think a lot of larger groups have learned, and that extends out beyond the realm of comic books. But it's like a lot of companies who normally would be scrutinized immediately for anything they say on any topic are like, what if we just don't say anything? And they don't, and then everyone's just talking about how they're not saying anything, but they're not also criticizing them. And they're like, well, I guess that's going to be the modus operandi from now on. But I think it's, I really appreciated the fact that Valiant and others very quickly were like, well, we have this plan in place. It's not a lie. Let's just tell them.
Like, it's, I understand why bigger companies and bigger corporations and their PR departments, let's wait and see.
Right.
Let's wait and see. Let's not cause panic. Because it is the thing, where if, if your big corporations, if any of them, they understand that they're the big dog in the park. And so if they say something that causes any kind of alarm, it just trickles down.
That's true. Actually, what if something is said from a larger group that is nameless, but it affects the retailer or customer confidence in the entire market? That affects you guys too. That's true.
It affects everyone, and it affects it in a much, it's a much bigger reaction.
Yeah.
Than from the smaller publishers. And so, I do get it. I too have noticed. I from being just an insider. But it has been very interesting seeing how different, and not just comics too, but just different companies have responded. I'm probably one of the crazy people that is reading every single press release that every single company sends me in my emails, right? From all the different retailers or fast food chains. I read every single one of them.
Yeah, just to see how they're handling it. Like, what is Bank of America's response? I'm getting emails from companies that I haven't bought from in 20 years, and I'm
exactly. And I'm just very curious the wording that they're using and what kind of messaging they're trying to send. From a weird sociological interest of mine. I find it very interesting. But as at Valiant, first and foremost, we wanted the retailers to know that we had their backs, because it felt like, obviously creators are worried about their work. Publishers are worried about Diamond. And it's just retailers kind of felt to me like it looked like they're just who's looking out for us and who has our back.
Big time.
And Valiant, we have such a close relationship with our retailers, and such a close relationship with our fan base, with our customers. We wanted to send a message to them, to let them know, hey, we get it. This is scary for everyone, but we are evaluating this, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through it together. That was super important to us.
Definitely. I want to move a little bit towards your own personal experience, because having been to both offices in very different times, you've worked for both Marvel and Valiant. What's the difference between the Marvel office versus the Valiant office? I noticed that the Valiant office is it's a nice tight knit clique of people, and there's a lot of collaboration and ideas. It's not too dissimilar. Have you ever seen the Reading Rainbow video or episode about Valiant?
No.
It's incredible. It's on YouTube. I think you can check it out. But
I will find this.
Yeah, LeVar goes to Valiant Comics in 1990.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I might have seen. I watched a lot of Reading Rainbow as a kid, so I might have seen it then. But it's I don't remember. Any of them.
As a kid, I remember my dad was like, "Hey, they're talking about your comic books on the show." But they pretended the artists were in the studio and that they were drawing it as
the old school,
and I'm watching it, as an adult. I'm like, there's no way they're drawing Cadillacs and dinosaurs or whatever. No, the Cadillacs and dinosaurs was made by Topps. I guess I was thinking of the other guy who was not at Valiant anymore. But let's not talk about that. Anyway, the point is, regardless of the fact that people aren't necessarily drawing the books at Valiant anymore, it's very creative. There's a lot of energy, and it's and it's very open. Everybody can talk to each other. Just go and be like, hey, we're doing this, or hey, come over here, or do you have a second to look at this? Can you compare that to the Marvel thing, or would you rather not?
No, I mean I can. The Marvel thing. No,
the Marvel offices.
It's very different, but I think they both have their strengths. Marvel's been around for a very, very long time, right? They just celebrated their 80th anniversary.
Yeah.
They have what they do down to a science, for better or worse. And, they have the Marvel way, and this is the Marvel way, and it's not going to change. And, who can blame them?
It works.
It works. Right. It works. Love it or hate it, it works.
Exactly.
And, every department is very much its own
Gotcha.
thing at Marvel. Like marketing and PR might check in with editorial if they're doing, if they have questions about how they want to do something, but you don't sit down and have a conversation about it.
Gotcha.
And whereas literally for every single book before it gets announced, like, we just announced Savage, we have editorial sits down with the marketing team and sales team, and we sit and have a conversation. And like, this is what editorial's vision is. This is what we're thinking. Sales and marketing will, they'll spitball some ideas that they have and some what they see and what they're thinking, and really get on the same page of the messaging that we want to send out and promote this book with. That way everyone is on the same page. Whereas Marvel, like sometimes I would, even with the Star Wars stuff, Deadpool stuff, Gwenpool, like whatever, I wouldn't know that something was going out until like it came across my social media feed.
Right.
And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like the teams are great at what they do, but it's just different. Exactly. Yeah. And, like there was no communication between editorial and licensing. That didn't happen whatsoever, like, like the Marvel offices is hundreds of people, it's hundreds of people. And yet Valiant is like 23.
Yeah, well, having been to both, very different experiences all around. Yeah, my experience getting into the Marvel office was less of an invite and more of a deception situation. Where I was in high school, and my friend was in the city, and I went to go visit him, and we had nothing to do. And I'm like, well, let's go to Marvel.
Yeah.
And so we went to Marvel, and I'm from Jersey. I don't spend a lot of time in New York. When I did, I went to go visit my grandma in Brooklyn. So like, I don't have like the Manhattan experience. So, you go into an office building and there's a guy there behind a big desk with a book of names. And if your name's not in that book, you're not getting in the elevator. So, I told him I was another creator who was not me. And he let me write up, which is, crackerjack security back in 2000. And went in the elevator, got up to the main floor. There's this, I don't know if they still had it, but like, there's another lobby. You go through the thing, you get up, there's another lobby with Marvel, and there's a couple of comics on the coffee table, and then there's another receptionist to stop you from there. And that's who stopped us there. That was the person.
Of course,
like, yes, she was like, and what are you doing here? And we're like, oh, we're here for the tour. And they're like, we don't offer tours. Get out. And we're like, okie dokie.
Yeah.
But like, having looked at it for a second, it was much more like it was not like the LeVar Burton experience. There were more there were cubicle, like the lobby was cool, but like then you look beyond and there were cubicles and whatnot, and it was like, it's more like an office anyway. Okay, well,
it's I mean, they literally just moved to new offices, so I'm sure it's a little different, but. I mean, like the Marvel offices, there's the cubicles, and then like the conference rooms were pretty cool. Like the conference rooms, they had like themed rooms where you had the Hulk room and Iron Man and whatever. You'd have like cool like statues and things like that in there, and nice little murals. But for the most part, like editorial row and the bullpen and all that, it just looked like any office with comic art on the walls. Like.
Then the reason why I mention it and I asked is because we're in a weird place right now where, we talked about reaction / changes. And one of the big changes that I hope happens, which has nothing to do with comics, or maybe it does because of the disparity between the two offices, is the office environment itself, and how I feel like every corporate office that employs people who work at a desk, where what my job is I get up, I get in a car, I drive to my office, and I sit at a desk, and I work at my desk until I'm done and get back in my car and go home. If that job exists, it should be done. I think it should be done from home. And end of story, like across the board. And I think that there's been a big corporate kind of like reticence to say, hey, let's just do that. And even if it makes sense and it works across the board, it reduces on, traffic, congestion, fatalities, emissions, and like you can, as a company, you could save office space and reduce your size and your footprint and all that stuff. It's everybody's happier. In my utopian vision of nobody having to go to an office. But I feel like in the comic book industry, that would be a detriment, particularly in the Valiant place. But my question would be, Marvel versus Valiant in terms of, would you have known, like, if you had been doing your job from home, at the end of the day, when everything's all cleared up, you, having seen how Valiant works, you kind of need to go back. Like, you can't just do this from home.
Yeah, I mean, I'm such a homebody, so like this is my dream.
Right.
But yeah, like it would be one of those things where it's like, yeah, but like once a week I'd like to have a day FaceTime. You know what I mean? Like once a day to get all the meetings where it's just so much easier to do it in a room and see each other. Because conference calls, as great as they're chaotic, exactly. And even like Zoom calls where you see everyone's face, it's still chaotic. And nothing beats, especially in collaboration, nothing beats everyone just being in the same space with the same energy.
Totally.
And so, yeah, like things like that with Valiant, I think that's a very astute observation, is it would be very different. And it is very different.
Yeah.
And people adjust to it differently. And it's certainly changed the dynamic, not for better or worse, but it's just different, and we're all adjusting and yeah.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people are learning. Like, I think a lot of companies and employees hopefully are learning, like, oh, you know what? Like, some of these things I can do from home. Like, I don't need to do this again. And I'm hoping that, like, we go back. Like, when we go back, that we strongly evaluate it and make changes. I can imagine that, like, if a lot of most companies, I assume, don't make these kinds of observations or decisions until long after their relevancy has expired. But like, I would expect that, like, if you work for a major company or a faceless corporation, which requires you to just kind of like put data entry in, that, you'd hire a consultant firm to get like a measurement of productivity and be like, oh, as it turns out, on average, during the Corona outbreak, the productivity went up 200%. The problem, of course, is like, if they do that, if they were like, yeah, no, you know what, work from home, but I do expect 200% productivity output though. Like,
yeah, I think a lot of people are having to learn to adjust, like, because they don't have that like physical separation now, like. Yeah. Controlling your work hours can be very, very difficult.
Yeah. But for some of us who who love, the internet, or who work from home, or, or who enjoy being home, like, you find, like, I had a buddy who used to work for a missile defense contract, and he used to set his own hours because he had a unique skill set that was like, a matter of national security. And so he could literally, and he liked to work at night, so he would literally just like go in at 8:00 at night, work until whenever, and then just go home. And if he wanted to take a break, he would work 17, 20-hour days, and then just be
my God.
And be like, I just blocked off a week of time I don't need to do now.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of people who work from home, or who have learned to work from home, have discovered that, like, the 9 to 5 time slot is arbitrary, and some of us prefer to work in the morning or at night, or piecemeal throughout the day. And it's like, for me, when I do this, like, I work all day, kind of like, I take huge swaths of time off, and then I'll spend a chunk of time doing other stuff. And as it turns out, people are very unique, and it doesn't really make sense to fit them into a box and say work from 9 to 5.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Again, when you're in a collaborative environment and collaborative industry, like, where you do need people in a room or on a call, like,
you gotta be at that time. Yeah,
you got it right. Like, like, we have a daily, like I said, we have every single day to check in, and so, like, we have to be working at that time.
That's fair.
So it does, if you just as an example are an independent worker, your job revolves around you. And
True.
and when you're not relying on, like, I have a team of assistant editors, right? Like I have a team of associate editors. I have a team beneath me that I need to make sure I'm available for if they need me, or that they're available so I can delegate to.
That's true.
And so I think it all just boils down to communication.
Right. Yeah. And if they're asleep, you can't work with them. Like, that's just, no, you can't be selfish about it. I hear you.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're in an interesting place. Can you talk a little bit about what Valiant's plans are right now in this world? Like,
I mean, yeah, kind of like I said before, nothing, like I said, everything is changing, but nothing is changing.
right.
You know, like obviously Dr. Tomorrow 3 and Bloodshot 8 and Rise 6 were all supposed to come out in April, Quantum Moody 4, Visitor 5, like Final Witness number 1, like all of that stuff was supposed to come out in April, literally impossible to happen right now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, everything is changing in the fact that, like, yes, these books won't be coming out in April. They'll be shifted to, you know, July, June, whenever, you know, things are back up and running.
Yeah.
But they're still happening. You know, everything we've solicited, Shadow Man, Savage, like all of that stuff is still happening. It's just happening later. You know, like Diamond had us still send the July previews to them. So, you know, we had to rejigger some stuff and we sent to them like what we think should books be shipping then, you know, what we think will be happening. And we're working on August now and some stuff is getting shifted, but it's also happening. Projects that we have teased, there've been a couple, are still happening. Some of them are even still planned to happen roughly around when they were going to happen originally. Like, so it's, you know, it's more so a question for sales or marketing because their ears are a little bit more to the ground on this stuff than I am, as they're in communication daily with Diamond, with the retailers, with the book market. But, you know, like everything is still happening. We're still, you know, like, Exo number 1 just launched. Number 2 is ready to hit shelves as soon as so yeah, like right now it's just kind of, unfortunately it's a bit of a wait and see, and it's a bit of a wait and see that's not entirely even up to the comics industry. But I am very excited to see how the industry comes back from this, because I think there's been such a divide in the industry for a very long time, and I'm not meaning like divide in like a political sense, but I mean a divide in that it's become so like, well, what does Valiant need to do to push to the top? What does Marvel need to do? Sure, they're still ahead of DC. Well, what does DC need to do so they can beat Marvel? And now we're kind of all thrust into a situation where we have to lean on each other and we have to work together, because if even one publisher doesn't take the whole industry into consideration with how we come back from this, like it could capsize the whole ship. And you know, we really are all different cogs in a great big machine that is this industry. Like the customers, the fans, the creators, the retailers, the distributors, like we all need to come together and work together. And we're seeing that, you know, we're really seeing that, and it's a truly beautiful thing. And you know, it's going to continue to happen until we come back.
Well, and I'm seeing, I mean, like, you know, tribalism is something that we all kind of like, unfortunately give into at some point or another, and comic books are no exception, particularly, you know, superhero comic books, given, you know, Marvel versus DC, you know, all that stuff. And it's like, but one of the things that I've always noticed is that the creators are always in communication with each other. They're always collaborating with each other, or at the very least, they're always like talking about it. And because they all know each other, they all work in the same field. And for them, there is no tribalism, because it's like, it's a job, you know, it's like, if I don't work here, I'll work here, you know, and it's 1-to-1 for me. I would like to see, and I wonder if this is happening, and if not, you know, maybe it should, some communication, because we've seen, thanks to the advent of social media, like that creators like are talking to each other nonstop, right? They're friends with each other. Gail Simone's tweeting up a storm about seeing these creators work together to make, Amalgam come back and stuff. Wouldn't it be nice? I'd be interested to see senior editors talking to each other across the aisle from different companies, being like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? What should we be doing?" Or, "Hey, we tried this." Maybe that's what is that happening in your experience?
Oh, that's 100% happening. I mean, that's the sort of thing that publicly, because if companies started doing that publicly, and then you always get the media speculation,
Totally,
which tends to, as we see in the entertainment industry, get blown out of proportion.
The sensationalism sells, yes.
It does. Panic sells, and panic especially sells right now. And
yeah. If you just publicly said like Valiant's talking to the Boom editor, it's like, are Valiant and Boom merging? Yeah.
Well, exactly. And so no, there's a lot of those conversations happening. Like, I'm on a Discord chat channel that's literally all comic editors.
That's awesome.
And so we, a lot of times it's just, here's cat photos, right?
Totally.
But there's a lot of conversation obviously going on right now about what is happening, and has, what is this publisher doing, or what are you guys thinking, or has anyone heard from so-and-so? And, we're all just trying to figure this out. And, if we can all get together on the same page, or at least be communicating at the very least, like, I think it would be very helpful.
I think you're right. You said it earlier about how communication, it all boils down to communication. It always does. And in this case, like, something I've always maintained is that, like, there is no, there's tribalism cosmetically. But for us, like, the comic book industry is a unique animal unto itself, and it rises and falls with each other. Like, if Marvel closed, DC would be screwed, etc.
Yeah.
Like, and if they closed, you bet your bottom dollar that everybody else would, like, Dark Horse is not going to make it without, like, the larger companies helping to bolster the industry, or they'd have to evolve into something else. Everybody would have to evolve into something else. But there is this kind of, like, unspoken collaboration. When I say unspoken, I mean, obviously it is spoken, given that there's Discord servers dedicated to it. But, like, in terms of publicly speaking, I think that the tribalism runs deep, and because the audience has become the media because of social media, like, and you're like a senior editor of Valiant's talking to me, and I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have any stake in the comic book industry outside of me reading it. But for some reason, I get to talk about it and disseminate information to other people. The audience has become the media for the comic book industry. The tribalism is attached to it, or at least it comes along with it. And so there's this misunderstanding that, like, there is this and that, as opposed to it all being part of one Pangea. And, like, and I think hopefully this crisis and the constant, I don't want to say fear-mongering, but, like, the kind of rampant speculation and concern associated with it. Is the comic book industry dead? Is this company dead? Is Diamond dead? Is this dead? Like, is everything dead? I'm guilty of it myself, but only to get clicks. And but, like, this shaking of the industry hopefully will, I think, shake out the preconceived idea that there is this or that, or them and us, and it is just the comic book industry, and the collaboration is key, and that we can, like, I don't know, that we can understand that this is a very unique thing. It's not about Warner Brothers versus Disney. It's about the comic book industry selling books, and it being
it's about this medium that we love and that has brought us all together. And, it truly is getting us through these difficult times.
Every part. Like, the retailers are coming up with new and inventive ways to get people to read comics again. I'm seeing blind boxes. I'm seeing, like, pull orders and mailing lists, and, everyone's coming up with new ideas. And this new comics hub thing is another example of the comic book industry trying to come up with solutions to get comics to readers. And So it's interesting. And I'm happy about it. I'm happy to see that at least on the comic industry side, everybody is maintaining a semblance of positivity and progress. They're all like, okay, what are we going to do about this? Not, like, what are we going to do and how are we going to keep them from doing it, you know?
Well, we're creative people, you know, like at the end of the day, like literally our jobs to come up with ideas. And we're really seeing that happen right now. And it's truly beautiful to see, you know, every part of the industry come together in that way, for the betterment of us all.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, because I feel like that's a good place to wrap up. I wanted to mention, because Valiant's coming back, because everything's coming back. What can you tease as a senior editor for what Valiant's going to be doing and what we're going to be expecting to buy?
Oh gosh, what can I tease? Not a lot. But I can say that, you know, like I said, everything we announced previously, everything that we solicited, Savage, Final Witness, Shadow Man, like all those books they're done. Like, you know, we're ready to send to print on, you know, like, on all of them. And so once we're back, we're coming back so strong with so many amazing number ones with some huge creators. Along with, I'm sure as soon as we get back, we'll be announcing our fall line, which has some pretty awesome. I was gonna say psychotically awesome, but I don't like that. It's not good.
That's very good. I dig it. I think it's a good pull quote. Okay, well, psychotically awesome on the cover.
Psychotically awesome. There you go. But yeah, we, you know, like once things are back, you know, we've got some huge announcements with some like amazing, huge creators that we can't wait to share with you all. And you know, I was just saying on another interview the other day, like this only gives us more time to make it 100% worth the wait.
Right. That's great. Well, Heather, thank you so much for joining me. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching or listening to the show. And I hope you come back. It'd be a lot of fun to continue this conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens tomorrow. It's only Thursday. So
I know.
And then we have the whole weekend for everything to catch fire.
It's true. One day we'll get our studio interview that we were talking.
Yes, that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to being allowed to use physical space again. I mean, it's me, but it's a big space, so it's just me being like, hello? But yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.